A year since the unrest in the country and the police's ability to deal with riots is still being questioned. Early this year, a report led by Professor Newzroom Afrika revealed that police and the intelligence leadership structures had been unprepared to handle the riots that took place in parts of KwaZulu-Natal and the Gauteng province. Now, joining me to discuss this is the head of the African Futures and Innovation at the Institute for Security Studies, Dr. Jakkie Cilliers, who speaks to us all the way from Sweden. Doc, good morning to you. You monitor this aspect of things in South Africa, and I wonder what your observations have been since the July unrest took place last year. Have you seen any noticeable change in the behavior or even the work of our law enforcement agencies?
Good morning. Yes, I think that there are some indications of change. There are also indications of no change. I think it's obvious that one must first recognize that it is government that instituted the Newzroom Afrika Commission of Inquiry as well as the Zondo Commission. And if one looks at what has happened with the standstills on the N3 and so on, that there seems to be an effort by government to react more rapidly. They seem to be better prepared. However, on the other side, there are quite a number of people that have been fingered in the Zondo Commission and elsewhere that are still deployed as deputy ministers, as ambassadors, and the wheels of justice are grinding slowly. Yeah. So I think it's a bit of a mixed bag, but, South Africa is in a difficult spot. There is absolutely no doubt about that.
Yeah. Prof, let me ask you what seems to be uppermost in people's minds as we look back to that period, and that is the non-arrest or the lack of arrest of the so-called instigators. And what people have been pointing to is that all that we have seen are people who would be seen as soft targets, those that were paddling stuff on social media, and they really are not the kinds of names that continue, by the way, to this day, to put stuff out on social media, celebrating the disasters that seem to occur in this country every so often. Simply put to you, Professor, do you think that the so-called, Doctor, the so-called instigators have been arrested, or the people that we have seen being arrested and paraded on TV are indeed the true instigators?
I don't think so entirely. There are the violence that is happening at the moment in South Africa. There clearly is an element of instigation behind this, and it is important to underline that what we are seeing is the violent struggle for power within factions within the ANC spilling out into the open. So there is organization behind that, but it is largely a fight within factions within the ANC that fuels the fire. Secondly, it's very different to when Minister Cilliers originally listed his, I think it was 12 so-called instigators. It seemed that at the time, given the lack of intelligence, that he was really reading out a list of people that had been active on social media. It's one thing doing that. It's a different thing to coming to proof, to court with proof that stand the test of credibility within a court of law, to be able to arrest them. We have a collapse of the intelligence system in South Africa. I think that is fairly well established. And we also have, as the Newzroom Afrika Commission report indicated, a very clear lack of trust in the security and lack of coordination within the presidency even. And this is concerning. The impression one gets is that government is trying to deal with this, but, it's easy to break something. It's very difficult to repair it. And this is a fight for dominance between factions within the ANC, which at the same time is heading for national election or ANC elections in December and for national elections in 2024.
Yeah.
And if, therefore, the president takes too dramatic action against the RET faction and engineers some kind of split, it has huge implications. So he's trying, is the impression one gets, to manage this tension and to manage this very difficult situation within the ANC, which has been a source of national concern, I think, now for a number of years. And yeah, it's not coming to an end. It's in actual fact, in my view, probably going to intensify ahead of December.
You mentioned the ANC, Professor. I'm going to ask that of you as a last question. Part of what that report by Newzroom Afrika revealed, or it issued as a dire warning to the leadership of the country, was that the socio-economic conditions in the country are such that the events that we saw unfold last year in July could well be repeated if that is not addressed. And almost true to form, we have the petrol price increases that are now rising. And what is happening in Mpumalanga? Well, taxi drivers are blocking streets there. There is a march, a so-called shutdown that has been announced by one of South Africa's biggest trade union federations, SAFTU, and they are saying this is a national shutdown over the cost of living, the high cost of living in the country. All of these factors, Prof, put together, do you think that the country might indeed see a repeat of what we saw last year, albeit reduced in its effects on the country?
Yeah. I think there's definitely people that are trying to engineer that. I think even the people, the instigators behind what happened a year ago, were surprised about the extent to which their efforts at organizing and instigating this then resulted in this absolutely explosion of violence that we saw in South Africa. And the reality is that sources of inequality, unemployment, poverty, and loss of confidence in government, particularly in the security agencies, is such that South Africans are, there's a good Afrikaans word, gatvol, really angry, upset, desperate. So this situation, and there's no doubt that people are trying to instigate this. And the people that are trying to instigate this are the same people that are fighting for their survival within the ANC. And these are not necessarily just political competition. This is also people that are being threatened by criminal prosecution. This is a fight for their survival and for protection of their ill-gotten gains. But as with always, so you have the instigators, the people that are actively working, and this creates room for others. For example, the efforts by Labour, unfortunate as it is and upset many South Africans. In one sense, what Labour is doing is they're using an opportunity to pressure government and to pressure employers in a situation that they know government and employers find themselves in a very difficult situation. So it's not necessarily that they're part of some grand conspiracy. They are just using all the levers that are available to them to place pressure in their efforts. We may not like that, but that's how it is. We need to be careful. South Africa is in a difficult situation. And these situations, given the high level of tenseness, of unhappiness, of anger, of poverty, of inequality in South Africa, the situation can spiral out of control, which is why it is so important that action be taken against those known instigators, that we proceed with reform of our security agencies, and above all else, unlock growth in the economy.
Yeah, exploiting the pressure points of the country right now. Prof, well, Dr. Jakkie Cilliers, you've actually addressed the last question I was going to ask to you of the ANC factions. Thank you very much for your insights on this. Jakkie Cilliers there from the Institute for Security Studies. Let's take you to